Now do you believe me, Ranger?
What has happened to me?
You are banished from death. Cast adrift between the worlds of light and dark. Curse binds us together within the walls of Ardar.
If what you say is true, then how do we break this curse?
We find the one who cast it on us. The Black Hand of Sauron.
Welcome all, this is Bradford, and we're talking a little bit about curses and the entire premise of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Now, this is the topic that has most people who are die-hard fans of the intrinsic lore that makes up Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and that entire Legendarium that Tolkien painstakingly built over his lifetime. It's this premise to the video game that has most of us up in arms that, honestly, until I saw the demo at E3 myself, I probably wasn't going to be buying this game. Now, the gameplay is what kind of put it over the edge for me. And honestly, I can understand why the game developers did what they did. Because as a gameplay mechanic, it makes perfect sense. Now, for those of you who are unaware of what the premise is, essentially, you would play the main character as Talion the Ranger, who is been killed by the Black Hand of Sauron, as Sauron makes his way back to Mordor after the events of The Hobbit. And he's brought back to life because the spirit of an elven wraith has essentially been forced into his body. They've basically been bound together, as the little cutscene at the very beginning of this video showed. Now, spirits lingering and spirits, staying around, that's nothing new to Tolkien. I mean, you just have to look at The Return of the King and the army of the dead, as they're called in the movies, or as the men of Dunharrow, as they're also known as. You don't have to look very far to see examples of this. It's not the idea that there could be, restless spirits and spirits being bound to the plains of Arda. It's the whole idea of this great elven lord whom we know to be, dead. He perished in the Second Age at the hands of Sauron. It's the whole idea of him being summoned and bound and essentially resurrecting the Ranger Talion and denying him what is the very fulfillment of his being. It's not that when men die, their spirits leave this world because they wanted to, but it's the fulfillment of the gift of men, the doom of men, as it's also called, given to them by the creator in the story, Eru Ilúvatar. So the whole idea that this curse could definitely, cause Talion to linger, cause his spirit to linger, and then in turn also cause the Black Hand of Sauron to be able to summon Celebrimbor back from essentially the dead. I mean, his spirit is either housed in the halls of Mandos in Valinor, or he's re-embodied in Valinor. Either way, his spirit is there. It's not in Mordor. It's not in Middle-earth anymore. That whole idea is what has most of us up in arms. Now, to make a very clear distinction between, say, the men of Dunharrow and what's going on here, the men of Dunharrow were oath breakers, and oaths have a very strong power in a Middle Ages mindset, and a lot of the things that go on in Tolkien's world are of that mindset. We see many times oaths being sworn in the Lord of the Rings and in the Silmarillion especially. I mean, the Oath of Fëanor is possibly the biggest and probably the most disastrous oath to be sworn in the Legendarium. And because of that oath and the unwillingness to break it, you have a ton of massively sad and destructive things happen. I mean, you have entire wars waged in the First Age, all because of the Sons of Fëanor wanted to fulfill the oath that they swore. You have elves killing elves because of the oath. You have massive death, massive betrayal, massive loss of life, all because of this oath. Essentially, nothing good came of it. And Tolkien kind of covers this in in the Silmarillion as to why this may be. To quote the Silmarillion, "For so sworn, good or evil, an oath may not be broken, and it shall pursue Oathkeeper and Oathbreaker to the world's end." Now, the reason why the men of Dunharrow are still lingering in Middle Earth during the Third Age, long after they swore their oath to Isildur, is because they broke it, and so then Isildur cursed them. But it was the breaking of the oath and then the curse by someone of the stature of Isildur that is what binds them there. They're not, there because someone summoned them there. They're there because their oath is compelling their spirits to linger until the oath is fulfilled. In fact, once the oath is fulfilled, they're released from their oath. They don't, just kind of stay there and hang out. They immediately disappear. They fade away. Their spirits are finally released from that oath. So I kind of see where the developers are trying to make this fit into the lore by tying it into a curse, but you don't really have it set up that way in the lore already. Like I said, the only example of that would be the men of Dunharrow, but it's a very different circumstance. They betrayed Isildur, they betrayed their oath, and therefore they're cursed. The other example would be the Barrow-wights, and you see them in the books. You don't see them in the movies, but they're totally different. The Barrow-wights are essentially spirits that have come to inhabit the bodies that are in the Barrows in the Northern Kingdom. Very different than what's going on here. They're called by the darkness. They're spirits from outside of Arda coming in and inhabiting this at the behest of I believe it's the Witch King of Angmar. Though their incantation they give over the body of the hobbits inside the tomb kind of points back to the Dark Lord, whom I assume they're talking about Melkor in that instance. So very different idea here. You have spirits that their whole job is to come in and animate these things. I mean, you have examples of that with the dragons. The dragons essentially are thought to have been inhabited by fell spirits. The Balrogs themselves are Maya that have turned to Sauron and Melkor's uses. Ungoliant is an example of that. She herself was believed to be one of the Maya. The eagles are thought to have been inhabited by good spirits, the people of Manwë. You have the vampire bats that were the original messengers of Sauron in the First Age. Those are, especially the named one, whom I'm spacing on the name at this point. You have them being essentially inhabited by these dark fell spirits. So there, I guess, is where they're kind of drawing the precedent for a spirit being able to come and inhabit a body. It doesn't fit here, though, because at this point in Middle-earth history, Celebrimbor has been dead for thousands of years. Again, his spirit would have gone on. There's nothing that would have kept his spirit lingering, because he was not bound by any oath. He was not bound by a curse that was laid upon him. Now, maybe the game developers will try to explain it further on we get into the story. I'm doing these as I'm playing the game so as to not have massive spoilers on each episode. Just hopefully the developers will try to explain this as we uncover more about Celebrimbor and how he was there, and the Black Hand, and who he truly was as well. But as it stands right now, the original premise of the story doesn't 100% fit with the lore as much as people might think it might. Again, as a gameplay device, though, it makes sense, because it gives credence to Talion's ability to resurrect himself after he dies at the hand of an orc. If you are already dead and the curse bounds you to this plane of the world, the circles of the world, then when you die at the hands of an orc, obviously you're able to resurrect. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow me on Twitter at LOTLore. Until next time, Namarie.